Hello, and thank you for your interest and excitement that we have received about first responder detox programs. This video is a lecture that was given by Dr. Chris Holder, who is the Director of Medical Research, Clinical Research at Integrative Healers Action Network, who is the nonprofit that, in collaboration with Volunteer Fire Foundation, delivers care to firefighters all over the state of California. So the following lecture was given in Pasadena, California after the Eaton and Palisades fire in 2025. I apologize, the beginning audio for this video for about the first 2 minutes or so was not working. So I am going to talk you through the first couple of slides here, and then we will go ahead and transition into Dr. Holder speaking. I wanted to give a little heads up as we post this information to be a little bit more broadly available, that this is for informational purposes only, and that of course it does not take the place of medical advice. There are varying degrees of complexity in detoxification in firefighters, so if you need more support, please find resources on our website that can direct you to qualified medical professionals. Thanks. So starting off here with the extent of the problem, I think that probably most of you are fairly familiar with maybe not the statistics, but the recognition that firefighters have more cancer and cardiovascular risk than the baseline population. A lot of our long-term studies actually came from 9/11, and we now have every 5 years studies on those individuals, and we are up to at least our 20-year study that has come out in regards to the increased risk of cancers associated with both being at the site as a rescue and recovery worker, i.e. firefighters and all other first responders, versus civilians that either were in the area, maybe in their homes or on the streets, and have continued to live thereafter. Maybe not surprisingly for folks in fire, these different risks for different cancers are probably largely dependent on the kinetics of how each of these chemicals is able to spread, store, flow, and continue to be an issue for individuals long term versus the toxins that were the biggest problem initially when a lot of the first responders were having access to the buildings only. So you can see here, this is just kind of to have you start thinking about where some of these toxins come from and how we start to think about what we need to test for. There's not a test out there for every single chemical that hurts human beings. There's about 80,000 of them in circulation, but we can test for quite a few of them. So PFAS, plastics and plasticizers, xylenes from paints, pesticides in home use, all kinds of metals, lots of mold. Mold happens to be, and you might hear Dr. Holder speak about this too, mold happens to be one of the things that we see highest in our firefighters year after year. And then things like styrenes and foams. So I'm going to let Dr. Holder take it from here on our past lecture. If you need additional resources, you can reach out to our organizations at Volunteer Fire Foundation and Integrative Healers Action Network. Thank you so much.
In the garage, or sometimes up north, we're in wine country. Vineyards and ag areas will have large vats of this stuff that can burn, end up in the smoke in the air. Metals, of course, and some of the metals are dependent on what temperature it's burning. So some things bust at a lower temp, steel at much higher temps, or not at all. Many structures have mold, depending on the temperature of, again, the mold burning. If it's a not as hot fire, you can end up with mycotoxins in that smoke. Well, side note, on some of our studies with other fire crews, we saw high mold markers and got to understand that some of our crews are training with moldy hay at low temp. It makes a nice thick smoke to train with. We're now doing some studies now to see whether training with non-moldy air makes their mold levels drop. And then, of course, think about how much foam is inside a structure, carpet padding, upholstery, chairs, car seats, a lot of foams burn. Outside the house, we've got utility poles, we've got pressure treated lumber, we've got roofing materials, we've got cars, sidings, gutters. You get the idea. So every big fire will have a different combination of what ends up in that smoke, but depending on what's burning, the temperature it's burning, wind direction, etc. You guys probably know all that better than me. Forest fires a little bit different. We've got a lot of formaldehyde that's naturally occurring in the wood, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane. I want to highlight that bottom right down there of when we use herbicides for fire mitigation, we see that show up in the smoke as well. So some wildfire smoke can have quite a bit of glyphosate or atrazine or 2,4-D in it. And then if there's naturally occurring arsenic or thallium in the soil, those trees will pull that up, and that can end up in the smoke as well. So sometimes that's why arsenic can be so high in fire crews, because it's coming from the trees that they pulled it from the soil. We'll get into that a little bit more at the end here. Pause here. Any questions? All right, I'm gonna keep going. So what can we do? Your body has natural ways of clearing things. That's why when you drink heavily, you don't stay drunk forever. The body will eventually clear that alcohol. So the first thing we want to introduce you to is this concept of total load. Everybody's got a different sized cup depending on genetics. So some people genetically are great excretors. You can put them in a coal mine in West Virginia forever and nothing happens to them. Other people, minor toxic influence, and they get super sick fast. They've got a tiny cup. And think of everything that gets into you is building up, and the cup is going up and down based on nutrients, certain things that you're eating that we'll get into, how fast it fills, what are the other activities you do that might be backing up the liver or other organs of detox. And then we think of, once the cup overflows, that's the point in which you're in my office sick, saying I'm nauseated, I've got cancer, I don't feel well, I'm fatigued. So one thing we want people to get really aware of is understand what that's like when your cup's about to overflow. And then what are the things to lower your load? Case in point, hanging out with all the fire crews up north, we learned that you guys like to drink after a fire. I've been telling everyone, wait 3 days, let your body metabolize what was in that fire, then have some alcohol. Because the body is pretty smart. It's going to go after the alcohol first, and then it will leave the other stuff you're exposed to in you. So rule number one, we try to keep things out of you when possible. Wear your SCBAs, wear your turnouts, keep your turnouts in the firehouses, all these things you guys already know. And some other stuff, key things. There's lots of stuff just in the dust outside. There's lots of studies on just taking off your shoes before you go into the house. Really lowers the amount of load inside the house. You get the idea. Eating organic when possible lowers the load. Foods can have quite a bit of pesticides. You guys get the idea. So think about the ways that the technology your departments have invested in and best use. Gone are the days where we leave all the smoke on your skin, get it off faster than it doesn't absorb. So just more on that, what you guys already know, clean your gear appropriately. Wear your filtration, wear your SCBAs, because it does, these are well shown now to really drastically lower your load. So now on to the next piece. I'm going to throw out a bunch of words here. Depuration is just a fancy word for detox. And your body will normally do this. We're going to teach you how to speed it up and how to optimize it. So the liver, the kidneys, and lungs are kind of your main organs of detoxification, but the liver is central to all this. And you can think of all these things, once they enter the body, some of them will be water soluble as they are, and then many of them are fat soluble, especially things like plastics. And so in order to get it out of the body has to turn that into a water soluble compound. So that's the whole main point of this slide. There'll be some things you recognize on here, like some of you might have heard of glutathione. That's what we're nebulizing into your lungs and injecting you it with. NAC is its precursor, so the body uses the amino acid NAC to make glutathione in the liver, kidneys, and lungs. And then there's a bunch of different antioxidants like curcumin that are naturally occurring in food. I could do a whole 10-hour lecture on just that, but I'm going to dumb it down, and you'll hear this 10 times tonight. If you're eating it, it's got a bright color. That bright color is an antioxidant, and it probably reverses some aspect of this. So the green in broccoli, the red in pomegranates, the red in beets, the blue in blueberries, that's what you want to go after as the antidote to some of these, because those are going to have a long list of precursors that feed into the liver and kidney system to help it detox.
Cool Ranch Doritos got calculated.
Cool Ranch, well, we'll see. JK is going to make them change the coloring, so it depends. If they start coloring it with curcumin like it is in Europe, that will be a better move. So once the toxin is coming out of the liver, it's going to come through the bile ducts, and the gallbladder is going to accumulate it. So most of the toxins are in the bile, and then gets released into the small intestine. Ideally, we have a binder around. Nature's binder is fiber. So if it's a vegetable or a fruit, it's going to have fiber in it. And sometimes, depending on what the toxin is, we often are using charcoal and sometimes other specialty binders, depending on what the compound is, with the idea of trying to route more of it through the stool and less through the urine, because some of these things are very toxic to the kidneys. Questions about that? We'll take questions at the end too. So there's 4 main ways out and a bunch of minor ways out. You can pee it out, you can poop it out, you can sweat it out, and the lymphatics also help traffic it through the body, through the lymph. There are studies on saliva and tears and breast milk and menstrual fluid and semen as well. But those aren't great ways of eliminating. These are the best. Stool would be number 1. So again, lots of studies, long lists of different flavonoids and antioxidants and anthocyanins, which are just fancy words for the colored portion of food. So, one big take home tonight is if it's brightly colored, eat it. If it's white or white powder, it's not going to have this capacity. So load up with the bright colors. Quick plug for a few things. There's a lot of compounds in green tea that are great for detox. Resveratrol is naturally found in red berries, grapes, wine, pomegranates. It's become a major anti-aging compound. It's excellent for the linings of your arteries. So as the smoke travels through your vascular system, it can damage the lining. They're making all the compounds is excellent for that. That's going to be in any brightly colored fruit. Pomegranate is my favorite. I try to eat one a day, October through January. It is truly a cancer and cardiovascular superfood. Curcumin comes from turmeric root. Another one, thousands of studies on cancer and cancer prevention on that compound, to the point where we use it almost like a drug in my practice, heavy amounts. Liposomal glutathione is one way that you can orally take glutathione, hold it in the bottom of your mouth and let it absorb straight to the mouth. So that's good for daily use. If you've got a higher load of smoke, we recommend nebulizing glutathione. And then for even higher dosages, we can IV that straight into you. Another plug for a compound called sulforaphane. You're going to see a lot of science on this. It's in any of the brassicas, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and not just sulforaphane. There's a long list of compounds that the liver uses to detoxify. And many of these compounds have been shown to directly kill cancer cells. In fact, everyone that's up on there does do that. So also think about skin exposure. Again, if you've got a bunch of soot on you, get it off. The thin skin on the neck is particularly susceptible. So we've got thicker skin in other parts of our body, but this is very thin. And the higher the temperature, the more those pores open up and the more whatever's in the air and on your skin can get in deeper. So with skin's an excellent way to detox, especially if you're getting rashes or other skin issues. The magic of sweating, I get a million questions about which sauna. If it makes you sweat, it'll work. So the magic is in the sweating. You want to get the sweat off you quickly, so don't let it dry back on. You'll reabsorb whatever you just excreted. We always recommend bringing towels into the sauna and wiping it off. You'll see all kinds of gunk come out. Exercise is another form of sweating. So they're both going to detox through the skin, through the sweat. And again, post-exercise, get those clothes off, get them washed, and get your skin clean. Stay hydrated with electrolytes so you don't cramp. Let's talk about lungs. We got to get away from just albuterol. There's a lot of good stuff to do that. Albuterol is great for opening up a constricting airway, but it doesn't actually detoxify the lungs versus NAC will, which is the precursor to glutathione. We are here tomorrow and we will be nebulizing glutathione. So basically making a mist that you breathe in, and then the glutathione is going to grab onto whatever's right there, sitting locally in the lung tissue. There's a number of herbs that have been studied that help detoxify and decrease the inflammation in the lungs. So long-term inflammation in the lungs turns into fibrosis, where the lungs scar and get stiff. We want to really avoid that. Glutathione is fantastic for reversing fibrosis and preventing it. Questions about any of that? So the other route, you can pee it out. Clean water is key. I tell my patients filter all water regardless of source, whether it's well water, city water. We can't get everything out of water unless it's reverse osmosis. And in some municipalities, that might be the best way to go about it. So there's certain things in city water that gets tested for and a lot that doesn't. When I practiced up in Seattle, there were a number of studies showing pretty high levels of birth control in water. Make your own judgment about Seattle males after that. But it's a big concern of what doesn't get tested for and what's still lingering in water. So we recommend filtering all water. You want to drink half your body weight in ounces per day. So I'm about 190. I need to drink 85 ounces a day. More if I'm sweating, more if I'm exercising hard, more if I'm drinking. And then remember too that we need those minerals when sweating. And then if you are using reverse osmosis for your water source, that will not have minerals. So think about mineral intake with that. Sometimes we recommend foods to increase urination, especially if you're swelling or your legs are swelling or holding onto water too much. Celery and parsley, nettles, or natural diuretics. There's a lot more. If you're really swollen, we just use Lasix. But many times, consumption of those foods really help. And any melons, watermelon, cantaloupe, you get the idea. They all have natural compounds that will make you pee more. increase detoxification through the kidneys. Then my favorite, stool. So the vast majority of this you want to poop out. So we're always, when we're working with patients, we're always asking a lot of questions about their digestion, because if I then start to detox you and you've got wonky digestion already, it's going to get worse. So oftentimes before I even detox somebody, I might try to fix what's going on in their gut first. Because if you're constipated, you're not going to poop out at a regular rate. And if I'm pushing more toxins through your bile into the stool and you're not removing it, it'll just recirculate. So if you're having diarrhea, constipation, gas, or bloat, and you're in pain, we often will try to fix that first before we're undergoing a big detox program. And if, you know, if you're having a lot of pain or serious problems, definitely see a doctor so you can diagnose what that is. We definitely can mess you up more if this isn't working quite right, because you think of your small intestine and colon as this tube, and if I start pushing more toxic things through that tube, we want to make sure it's working normally, otherwise we can make that problem worse. This is also where it's like critical with certain compounds that you use binders so that you don't reabsorb it and it definitely goes out.
What are herbal bitters?
Herbal bitters are any food that's bitter. Kale is a pretty popular one that you eat. Anything with a bitter taste. It's going to stimulate more saliva production. It'll stimulate your bile ducts. Probably in the fire service, your favorite bitter is going to be coffee. Right? Most common thing you guys consume that's bitter. And most of you will notice, at least with me, I drink it and 5-10 minutes later, I've got to go poop because I got a bile dump. And that starts stimulating the GI tract to do peristalsis. So it's the bitter foods that do that, that dilate the bile ducts. So that bile moves. Great question. So yeah, one way to keep your load down is to eat organic. The more you eat food closer to nature and the less processed it is, the more it's going to retain all those nutrients that we're after for detox and health. And the more likely that that antioxidant hasn't been damaged.
Any truth on the how you cook them? Like heard that if you cook broccoli too long, it takes all the nutrients out of it. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, definitely do a whole lecture just on that. Some nutrients are more bioavailable with cooking and some are better raw. Generally, the more you cook a food, the minerals are going to be more available, but you might damage the antioxidants. Whereas the antioxidants not cooked might be more available, but it's not a hard black and white rule, because some, such as lycopene in tomatoes, it's more bioavailable cooking it, and especially if it's in an acid like ketchup, it's more absorbed that way.
Like, what about herbs like thyme and all that kind of stuff? Not like shakers dry, does that kill all this?
There's less antioxidants than fresh, so
Get it fresh.
both will help, but fresh is best. And we're in a Mediterranean climate where those things grow so easily. It's easy to grow rosemary, thyme, oregano, pick it fresh, throw it in your food, throw it in your salad, and it's going to have much more potent antioxidant content than something that's dried. Great question. Yeah, so processing does matter. What else do we have on here? Oh yeah, favorite hydrotherapy. So hot and cold. This is all over the place now, from Joe Rogan to Andrew Huberman. All those podcasts are talking about cold plunges. Very good for the circulatory system to constrict and dilate, constrict and dilate. You actually pump a lot of the toxins out of the muscle and fat doing that. And also seems to spike testosterone, spikes blood cell counts. So I'm very pro alternating hot and cold. Lymphatic system, dry skin brushing is great. Get one of those brushes, you start externally, always towards the heart. excellent. And especially if you're having skin issues, like if you've been exposed to something and you're breaking out in a rash or acne is going nuts, skin brushing is very helpful to clear the skin. And then, of course, like we mentioned before, sweating of any sort, open up those pores, get the crud out of them, wash your face back off. And down at the bottom there, sleep is critical, and I know that's rough for you guys and depending on the shift. But sometimes part of the problem with detox is some of these things are removed during stage 4 and REM sleep. So if you're not sleeping deeply, or if you're not getting into REM sleep, some things aren't happening in the body normally. And some of these detox programs, especially for the brain. So the brain has its own washing and detox mode that's happening during those stages. So if you're having brain fog and feeling a little woozy after a long shift at night or not a good night's sleep, that's what's happening, is the garbage is built up in the brain. And we need to do something to do that, and the best thing will be to sleep. Like I alluded to, genetics play a role here. What is all this gobbledygook? So on the right is the name of the gene. Some of you nerds might know some of these things, like the first several at the top there are cytochrome genes. So those are the genes inside the liver. This person has pretty normal liver genetics, but people that have mutations in these genes, they might not processing anesthesia well. These are the people where smaller amounts of fentanyl might kill them, where other people, not a problem. These two genes right here, this one that's red, GSTPs, those are the glutathione production genes. So this particular individual has a little bit of a problem making glutathione. That's her. I'm not. I've got normal detox. So somebody like this, we might counsel them, hey, you probably can't work in a toxic job. You can't. I've treated a lot of flight attendants where they got cancer young, and then I'm looking at their genes and I'm like, wow, you really can't detoxify jet fuel. You probably can't go to that back to that job. I haven't seen this in the fire service all that much. I think you guys self-select people that are fairly good detoxifiers, or you get sick pretty young in the service. Most of you don't. Another one that's pretty rough to have, the superoxide dismutase gene. This is when we crawl inside the mitochondria. That's what makes the energy for the cell. The thing that quells the antioxidant damage inside the mitochondria is superoxide dismutase. And if you've got a genetic issue making it, you're going to be quicker to get poisoned by most of these things, and specifically in the brain for that gene. At the bottom here, these are acetylation genes. These are super important for smoke inhalation. That's one of the body's, and especially in the lungs, the main way that it's turning over certain compounds that are in smoke. So you can see at the bottom here, fairly normal genetics, and then one of these pathways is blocked. All genes have an RSID number, so that wherever we are in the world, if you Google that RSID number, you'll get a long list of papers. And it's a way that scientists can tell that we're all talking about the same thing. So that's what that RSID number is. This is what the change is on the genetic code. So green is normal, red is mutated. Each one is from a parent. So this person got a mutated gene from mom and dad. And this one, we can't tell unless we do mom or dad who they got it from. So they've got their single carrier there.
Can you tell them how they get that data?
Well, that's complicated right now because 23andMe was one way to get it. There's a number of private testing firms as well and softwares that do this. I actually need to do a deep dive at Instagram. I'm going to recommend at this point because I don't recommend using 23andMe right now, but that is how we got this. There's software that you put your raw DNA code through and pull all these genes and more. So sometimes this is helpful. If we've got sometimes I'll see a toxicology that looks really wonky, and I'll want to look at the genes to see, like, well, why couldn't they get rid of, why do they have an abnormal amount of something that other people's don't? Well, that could be that they don't make glutathione efficiently. And then I know to counsel this person, hey, when there's bad air, get out, go to the clean air faster. or take more glutathione more often, you know. So that's genetics. Can't change your genes, but you can change the environment and you can optimize how these genes are working. So here's an example of what these toxicology tests look like. This is a company, Vibrant America. We use them because we get pretty good pricing, and then also they're the only commercially available company that's doing PFAS testing off urine. So that's, of course, a very big interest in the fire service from your turnouts and from AFFF foam. So we've started to study it. Starting at the top there, aflatoxin is a mold toxin. Second one down, 2-hydroxyisobutyric acid is a metabolite of MTBE and ETBE. That's an anti-knock additive to gasoline that replaced lead when we got lead out of the fuel. As it turns out, that's also problematic and can cause cancer. Right below that is butylparaben. Parabens are preservatives in cosmetics. And right below that is a, that big mouthful is a PFAS. It's a second generation PFAS of what would be in likely AFFF foam in this individual who is a fire person in this fire service. Below that, so what's in the red is 95th centile levels. So when they compare this to the background population, if you're in the 95th centile, you've got way higher levels than everybody else. That's what we really want to hone in on, is like when they're in the red, this is abnormally high. We need to figure out how it's getting in and get it out. In the yellow down there at the bottom, that's 50th%, or excuse me, 75th centile. So still elevated above the background population, but not as crazy high. So you'll see this individual had some lead. Diethylthiophosphate is a pesticide. Same thing with the one below it. Glyphosate is Roundup. Thermoglycolic acid is foam. So think like the foam in a car, the foam in a mattress, carpet foam. This is why nobody packs in styrofoam packing peanuts anymore, because definitely we know this causes cancer at this point. Triclosan was an antibiotic that was in toothpaste and dial soap in the 90s and 2000s. It's been phased out except for Colgate toothpaste. And it's also been banned pretty much due to its links to cancer. Extremely estrogenic as well, meaning it will bind and block your testosterone and estrogen receptors. Down at the bottom, two more PFASs. These are older generation PFASs, so like what would be in IHAN foam further back in the 80s and 90s. Questions about that? So this is our first morning fasted urine. We tell you, go through the night, don't eat anything. 4 hours into sleep, you'll start burning some fat, and whatever's in your fat will go into the circulation and end up in your urine the next morning. So we collect that concentrated urine to do these tests. So a little more on PFASs and PFOSs. These go back to the 1940s. They do not exist naturally in the environment. These are completely man-made. Lots of products, lubricants, Scotch Guard, all my hunting clothing, any waterproof clothing back in the day, definitely all the fireproof clothing. C8, and this, we'll get into what C8 exactly means in just a minute here, was the older version of this. Now Gen X is what's mostly in firefighting foam. And if you Google any of this, you start getting law firms, because lots of people are suing over this at this point. And been linked to all kinds of stuff. And I believe this summer there's a large class action suit that's going to trial. So we'll see what happens with that. A little bit about PFAS chemistry. So that C8 refers to how many carbon atoms are there. So this one is a C6. There's 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. C8 would have 8, C10 would have 10. The thinking at the time was the longer the carbon chain, the more toxic it is. We now know that that's not entirely true. But the longer the carbon chain is, the longer it persists in the environment and is harder to break down. So these have been termed forever chemicals. It's not quite right either. There's a ton of scientific papers now outlining the circumstances in which these would break down in the environment. So there are mushrooms that break this down and certain bacterial enzymes, but they do persist for a long time and are hard to break down. And mostly because these fluorine atoms sticking out on the side here, a lot of that particular type of chemistry, nature hasn't had to break down because it doesn't exist normally. But bacteria and fungi are pretty funny. They figure out how to break down everything. And so chemistry, if we've got our pot and pan here, so we're going to add a layer of Teflon on it, these fluorine groups are going to be sticking out, and that's what makes it have that non-stick surface. Questions about that?
So what pans do we use?
Stainless steel, cast iron, not aluminum,
Ceramic.
ceramic, yeah. Two passes are good.
You get excited.
Dr. Holder says go shopping. I think about, these show up in all kinds of wild places like that foil looking stuff inside a candy wrapper. That's non-stick, so the candy doesn't stick to the wrapper. That's got a PFAS. Inside fast food packaging, that seems weird stuff, so it doesn't stick, or that waxy weird foil. That's a PFAS. Pesticides have it. Because it makes it stick onto the plant better. Like I alluded to, anything stain resistant, my hunting clothing, all my outdoor gear, firefighting foams, insides of popcorn, microwave popcorn bags. These definitely, if you eat microwave popcorn, that definitely spikes levels. There are studies on that. A lot of paints will have this in it as well. Dental floss. Don't want to be using dental floss with this, like that circulation is right there next to the brain. Yeah, that's what makes it slide. Unless it's pure wax, but a lot of them aren't wax, they're coated with Teflon. Especially the ones that feel like plumber's tape. So plumber's tape is PFAS, helps seal. It's like, oh shit. WD-40, so all kinds of lubricants, all the bike lubricants I used to use when I was fired.
What about hydrant grease?
I'm sorry.
Grease. It's not greases,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of synthetic greases are gonna have this, especially ones that are gonna perform at high temperatures. Like what the oil that you wanna use in your race car when you're revving that engine really hot. The more of this stuff they put in there, that oil doesn't break down. That was Valvoline back in the days, big. Technological breakthrough in oil. So more fancy thing, your turnouts are made out of polytetrafluoroethylene, which is a C8 compound. Later, they started making it from Gen X. Many of you guys have heard of Vortex. It's in a lot of our outdoor gear. That's a type of this. So these synthetic membranes are great at breathability, fireproofness, and water resistance. But when they get into us, trouble. When we burn them, trouble. And then that in the middle there is kind of the history of, and there's many more. I've definitely dumbed this down, but the AFF foams started out mostly C8, some C10 back in the day. And then they moved to shorter chains thinking it was safer. We'll see in the lawsuits whether it was actually safe or not, because a lot of scientists think they knew it wasn't safer and still put it out on the market. So that'll be the headlines later this summer if the trials go through. And there are a couple of documentaries on this. So communities where the factories were making this have been heavily. There are giant billions of dollars that Dow, 3M, all the manufacturers are having to pay into these communities where they had just dumped it into the water supply. So that movie Dark Waters and The Devil We Know are both on this topic. But not so much, it's not linked to like fire, it's more the factories that made it and how they handled those compounds. And the science of this is just beginning because these are fairly new that we can measure them commercially. But they seem to be causing havoc in a number of organ systems on autopsies in mice. We see accumulation in the brain, thyroid, liver, kidneys, pancreas. Definitely linked to preeclampsia if it's in a pregnant woman. In our pilot study, we started testing this about what, a year and a half now, almost 2 years.
No, this is our
Remember, it's
third,
December of
this is our third year.
third year.
Mhm.
Okay. So we started measuring PFAS on all our crews that were doing our detox program because we didn't know how do you get this out. The headlines say it's a forever chemical. We thought, okay, is it in there forever? Is it that the body can't excrete it? But our testing on our 16 and 12-week programs is showing that these levels drop. We need further science on the topic to know. We don't know what's doing it. I don't know, is it the glutathione, is it the binder, is it sauna? We think some of the chemists know, but they're under gag orders, I think, because of the lawsuits right now. So we're not able to talk to what they know about the chemistries of these things. But some preliminary stuff, the usual stuff that you normally use seems to help mobilize it. So vitamin C, curcumins, these anthocyanins, that's a fancy name for the dark pigment. So the blue that's in blueberry, the red that's in pomegranate. There are compounds in green tea that have shown promise. A lot of this compound is carried in blood proteins. So there are studies on just blood donation and having that drop the levels. Because some of them bind to the albumin coming out of the liver that's floating around in your bloodstream. And definitely in the environment, reverse osmosis is going to be the best way if your water has it in it in terms of removing it. Charcoal-based filtration will remove some, about 70 to 80%, give or take, based on the studies. So charcoal helps, but it's not perfect. And then I put iodine question mark on here. This is my geekiness as a chemist and looking at the structure of these compounds. I think that flooding the body with iodine, and also just these are the tissues over here that are wanting to accumulate iodine as part of the normal chemistry. So we may be doing a study on that. Crash course in chemistry here. So here's iodine on the periodic table. Here's fluorine. Everything in the same valence. This is a common thing in chemistry, is that if a tissue like the thyroid, brain, breasts, ovaries, and testes, they need iodine for the normal functioning. And if something looks like it or is close enough in structure, it'll accumulate it. So we say the same thing with like chlorinated pesticides, accumulate in the thyroid, ovary, breasts, brain, testes. Same thing with brominated compounds. And we're now seeing the studies coming out, so fluoridated ones do as well. With these two compounds, we often give high doses of iodine, and we can show that these mobilize out. I'm assuming the same thing here, but science is funny. Don't always assume things are not black and white. But I'd like to do a trial with somebody with high levels and using iodine to see if it comes out faster. Same thing, more pertinent for you guys with wildfire smoke and arsenic. The trees are pulling it up and it's incorporating where they would use phosphorus. So that's how it ends up in the tree. We burn the tree and the arsenic ends up in the smoke. But it's the same thing in our bodies. Our body will misuse that arsenic where it would use phosphorus. So that's part of the reason why arsenic might accumulate in somebody's bones, because the bones have phosphorus, the teeth have phosphorus, nails, things like that. You can generally think of these things in the blue are the things that are normally found in the body, especially carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur. By weight, those are mostly what we are. The rest of this stuff shouldn't be in us at high levels. Questions about that? Is that helpful to kind of know that piece? I always found that kind of cool, of like, why does something end up in a certain body compartment? It has to do with like at the chemical level, what that looks like and what the body's normally trying to do. So a couple of case studies here. So this individual was a firefighter. He's a 55-year-old male, 20+ experience. I believe 3 occurrences of bladder cancer prior to this. So we ran this test. This is first morning fasted urine. This is what we call an unprovoked test, meaning I say pick any day and we're not giving you something to push this out into the urine. Versus a provoked test would be if I give you glutathione and then collect your urine the next day, it's going to look crazy. So his looks crazy without provocation. And crazy is, you know, again, look at the number of compounds in the red here. Lots of different stuff. We've got mold toxin, mold toxin, mold toxin, mold toxin. Phenol is going to be in fuels, lubricants, brake fuels, fluids. Jackie, was he an engineer? Can't remember what. Yeah, okay, he was an engineer. Sometimes I can pick the engineers out by the lubricants and fuels in you. BPA is plastic.
Irishman has a big.
BPA is plastic. Diphenyl phosphate. I want to highlight this. This is how I know he's an old firefighter, because that was the old flame retardant back in the day in the clothing. It was what was in kids' pajamas and mattresses. That's why you couldn't rip off the mattress tag, because they legally had to tell you it had that compound in it. So just if I didn't know it was 55-year-old male, just looking at the level of that compound, I can tell this is somebody in their 50s or 60s, because somebody younger wouldn't have that level of the diphenyl phosphate. So really old fire clothing, that would have been what was in it back in the day. Right before that, the rest of those are PFAS, 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 PFAS. This is somebody that was in and had a lot of contact with AFFF foam. Same thing up here, more PFASs, molds, metals at a moderate level. And more PFASs down at the bottom there.
What are we doing now?
He's great, no recurrence.
The next slide.
Here's the next slide.
He's great.
He's doing good. Yeah.
I highlight here too, you know, with somebody like that, with that much stuff, and that's not typical. His was like abnormally high. 12 weeks. Here's what we're now seeing. A lot of the stuff in the red has shifted into the yellow. A lot of the stuff in the yellow has shifted into green. He now only has 2 things in the red versus so many before.
6 of his 9 red PFAS normalized, they went all the way back into green. And he was declared cancer free for the first time in 3 years for the,
So his case, he was with our first group, or the first group that we were measuring PFAS with. And we didn't know. We're like, we don't know if we can get this out. And then we see this plummet in him. And we're like, oh, it comes out. And not just him, but everyone else at this point as well. So that made us very excited, because there's not human studies on this yet. Yeah,
So what did you do in that 12-week period?
We're gonna tell you.
we're in there. Got you curious. I've got money. They want to know.
An entire program.
Worse, we made him enema pomegranate.
Anything for health.
So here's another patient, another 55-year-old fire chief, 25+ years experience. This is more typical of what we'd see. You know, 4 to 6 things in the red, not 16 like the other individual. As we've been learning too, is, you know, so many in the fire service have high mold markers. And sometimes where we're doing a whole firehouse and seeing everybody with mold, it's in the firehouse in some cases. What's with the makeup?
You don't hurt it.
Yeah, some, you know, shaving creams often. It's not necessarily makeup. He might have been doing drag, but I doubt it. You would have had more makeup markers than just that one, but just like, you know, Gillette shaving gel would have that in it. I gotta stop naming brands when it's being recorded. There's that 2-hydroxy isobutyric acid again. So again, evidence of fuel exposure. This is also why we've changed, the exhausts in the bays, because we're finding tons of fuel in people. Another note of, how I can tell, based on his lead level, he was exposed to leaded fuels as well, so I know he lived through the 70s. What else? Down at the bottom, 2 PFASs. Those are the old school AFFF foam versus this one that's high here is in the newer formulations here. So this is a shorter chain. These are long chains in terms of the number of carbons on there. At this point too, sometimes now that I've seen so many of these, I can sometimes guess by occupation. So somebody that's that farm fire, if I picked this out of a pile of these, I'd be like, this guy's probably a firefighter based on PFAS levels and which PFAS. And I probably will be able to guess that he's in his 50s based on other toxins that would be in there and that lead level. So it's pretty interesting what we can figure out by what's in you. Sometimes geographical location of where you grew up to, there's certain compounds used in agriculture that are specific to an area, or specific things that are being mined that we only see in some places and not others. Yeah.
Is this also unprovoked?
This is also unprovoked. So always the first test, I don't provoke, because it's if you provoke, you're going to see a bunch of stuff, and it's hard to tell like what is high and what's not high, because it's just going to flush everything from the tissue. I want to know what people are walking around with that's problematically high right now. And then after that, we start provoking. So the tests after that are provoked. But you provoke long enough and the levels start to drop. So here's the 12-week test on that second patient. Nothing in the red. A few of those things have shifted into the yellow. I think what else to highlight about this one? Oftentimes when we see something not move, like this pesticide, that just might mean continuous exposure, meaning he didn't change his diet, he kept eating food with pesticide. And then you can see down at the bottom, the 2 PFASs are starting to drop, especially the one that was really high, dropped quite a bit, 50% in 12 weeks.
Oh yeah, and it's fatty liver.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. He presented with fatty liver for at least 3 years by ultrasound, gone after 12 weeks. Fatty liver, fairly common in the fire service. What's happening there is when the liver's overcome with toxins, whether it's alcohol from drinking or just fire service or anything else, the liver's pretty smart. It'll say, I don't have the nutrients to get rid of this right now. I'm going to just pack it in fat. And some of this is driven by genetics, and we'll pack it in the fat right here. And some of us will pack it right in the leg. The good thing about that is that's going to be, when you start burning fat, that'll be the first fat to go. So in this case, as we flooded his body with the nutrients the liver needed to turn over the toxins that were stored in the liver immediately melted that fat and got rid of it. And then on ultrasound, fatty liver was gone, and his liver enzymes had gone back into the normal range. It's funny, in all of our studies, we weren't even looking for that, but we've seen that pretty consistently now with fatty liver. And this should be a top treatment for it. A lot of patients as well talk about improved energy. A lot of these things are just mitochondrial poisons. So they damage the mitochondria, the cell can't make enough energy, and so you feel fatigued. The sleep piece, think about 4 hours into sleep, I start burning some fat. If there's something really inflammatory in that fat and your inflammation goes up, the body responds to that with cortisol. Cortisol wakes you up, can't sleep through that. So those of you that are waking up every 3 hours, that's my first question, is what's coming out of your fat? Or who's calling you? What shift are you on? Because some of you guys take a lot of night calls and that's what's waking you up. But if you're waking up like that, or your sleep is not very deep. Oftentimes we test cortisol, the cortisol level is high. We want to know what's driving that up, get it out, and a lot of people report that they're sleeping so much better after that. So, to answer that earlier question, what in the world did we do for 12 weeks? There was an hour of weekly sauna. More is better. Our data suggests that 3 days a week at least is optimum. There were none of those supplements that we used. Those supplements are, again, those nutrients that the liver uses. You can get them from food. When we're using it as a supplement, we're using it like a drug. So concentrated in high levels. We do have a QR code here somewhere.
I'll grab it and it'll be available.
Exact products we're using. We are not paid by any of those companies. It's just me mucking around with patients, figuring out what excretes the best. When I find something that works better than what I'm using, I switch the protocol. So we wanted to make that available to the fire crews of what we're using. Yeah.
So are those supplements, right? Like you said, you give it in high doses, is there any side effects?
Yeah. Side effects can be, if we dose it too high, you can detox too fast and you'll have the same symptoms as when you're toxic: nausea, dizziness, brain fog, fatigue. It's pretty normal to have a little bit of that at the beginning of a detox because we are pushing a lot of chemicals back into the bloodstream from the deep tissue. We try to dose things in a way that's not like that. Depending on the compound, sometimes we have to, because some things you want to get out of the body as soon as possible, like uranium. When you guys are on duty, we're using half doses because I don't want you sick or unable to do your job. So that we're using enough to move things out, but not so much that anyone's going to complain, typically. This study had once a week IV glutathione. It was double the dose that you'll get tomorrow. So 1 gram is what we do when you're on duty. When you're off duty, 2 grams. So we're doing 2 grams a week for 12 weeks. We're also nebulizing at the same time. So you're getting your IV and you're getting nebulized. And then we have education courses just like this, where we're talking, people are either on Zoom or in person, and we're teaching them the same principles. So you guys are basically getting the program, just not all the testing, but we're telling you what we did, how we did it, how we moved it, and those are the tests, some examples of tests that we've done. We're accumulating that data, beginning to publish papers as well. So yeah, this gets into like, what are my options? So we will be doing a 12-week detox study program on LA firefighters that responded to the fires in January. But we've got funding to do about 18 to 20. So that won't be everyone. So otherwise, there's a lot of local doctors that know how to do this. Functional medicine doctors, a lot of naturopathic doctors. Some of the doctors that are coming with us are local. So utilize them as a resource. We are providing the QR code of what brand and what supplement, what dosing are we doing in the study, so you can mimic what we're doing in the study, if you so choose. And IV and nebulized glutathione is readily available in the LA area. And then for those of you that want, you can apply to be in the study. So that's another way. We'll be starting in September, so look out for the application. And then you can also use a local doctor as well. So just pick doctors that are trained in this. And if you need help, sometimes we can help you find one in your neighborhood. Yeah.
If we seek out a functional health clinic, what's something that we can look for to know that they're legit or they're able to provide us
Yeah, great questions. First of all, that they have some sort of medical license, because there are people out there doing all kinds of stuff without a license. So definitely a license. Ask them if they specifically have training in either toxicology or environmental medicine. But generally, if the doctor is using the term functional medicine doctor or naturopathic doctor, a lot of them are going to have that type of training. And then some of us have further training in oncology. So I mostly see cancer patients and patients with neurological disorders. But a lot of those doctors that are trained in oncology, they're trained really well on how to prevent it too, which is exactly what we want to do with you guys. Is we don't need another 9/11. We need to treat you guys adequately so that you don't go on to get a bad outcome. So you can retire in Idaho or wherever you want to be. So a lot of this is, us educating you, getting you comfortable with this. It's around. I think we have funding to come back for the next 5 months, once a month. So we'll be doing more of our clinics that you guys have been to. But don't feel stuck in like you have to come to a clinic. There's a lot of trained professionals in this area that you can reach out to. Or you fight a fire and you feel like you got a little too pumped up, find a local doc that'll infuse you. Because faster is better. You don't want it settling into your tissues. Okay. So we're here to support you. Thank you to the two Jennies, Jenny Harrow and Jen Riegle, my wife. We formed Integrative Healers Action Network after the Tubbs fire. Jackie with Volunteer Fire Foundation, our partner in crime. I'm Dr. Holder. And we're open to any general questions now. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about like and like brain health as far as for maybe your recommendations, say, only got however like a lack of sleep for a few days. What is the best? I know for most of us we have like some sort of like brain fog, we talk about like lack of focus, obviously being tired. It's like going to sleep right away if you can, like when you get home the best. Is it better to like, someone should be like, oh, we'll just wait it out, or work out, or take caffeine and push through till that next night, or like in addition to that, are there other like supplements or things that kind of help with maybe some of that like clarity or focus,
Yeah.
sleep.
What I'd steer you into is, one, it depends on the situation. The fire's still going and you're on the line, you're not gonna sleep well, and that's okay. But after it's out, we really are into mind-body trainings, things like heart math that Jenny specializes in. There's a lot of techniques that Naval SEAL teams and other, we basically consider you guys industrial athletes, but say it's pro athletes are doing. To be able, you see something stressful and you do something stressful, and then to be able to flip a switch very quickly when you come back to center is super advantageous. That's going to be meditation techniques, but any technique that gets you to reset very quickly is kind of the key. So I like that better than having to rely on a substance or some other outside thing, which there are a number that are helpful. If you're very inflamed and you're waking up because of that thing I talked about, it's a good start because it covers a lot of bases. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory, and it's in a lot of sleep formulas at this point. So supplement wise, that's the way to go. But especially for you, for the younger fire service guys, pick these guys' brains that are really experienced. How do you handle a trauma, seeing something traumatic, a bad car wreck or somebody's body really mangled? Know when, what are the signs of PTSD? If I'm having flashbacks to that, that's your psyche saying I'm overloaded. I need to defrag the hard drive. And there's a lot of good professionals that are really good at that. But you can be trained into it. Some of these guys know how to do that really well and can teach you. Jenny, would you add anything to that?
Great. If you're coming to our clinic tomorrow or Sunday, come and talk to me, and because I'm trained in, like Chris mentioned, a technique that's called heart math, which is a really simple breathwork technique that is utilized by all branches of the military. It's really focused on working with people who are in high stress jobs. And so it's not necessarily a deep relaxation technique. It's a type of breathing that you can do while you're out, driving the rig, out doing the work, but it's to balance the parasympathetic and the sympathetic part of your nervous system. And you can do it in just 1 or 2 minutes, and it can be kind of like an instant reset. So the saying is that if we can get you feeling more calm in your heart, we're learning about heart rate variability and how that's connected to our autonomic nervous system, and so learning really simple techniques to find balance of getting a little bit more relaxed through these heart-based breathing techniques, and then it brings extra clarity to your mind. There's a direct connection between the heart and the brain. So I'd be happy to share while we're at our clinics. And then what's cool is the more you get into that, there's actually some biofeedback devices that you can use through your phone where it's measuring your heart rate variability. And so you're being trained in this breathwork technique, and you can look at your phone and be like in the red of like kind of more dysregulated, and then through this breathing technique in just less like 1 or 2 minutes, the device will show you that you're kind of hitting that sweet spot of coming into more regulation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of devices now, or rings, Whoop straps, or Apple Watch that are looking at heart rate, that you can use that and see, okay, how did I respond to that situation? Oh, my heart rate was 120 or higher. You know, maybe I can be calmer in this situation and train into that calmness. A lot of applications that way. From Marine snipers, that minute body movement from your heart beating too fast is going to make you not accurate. So those guys are heavily trained to drop their heart rate before taking that shot. But you're overriding that sympathetic response to do that. And through training, you can train to do it very quickly. I'm biased. I am old school. I want to train you to not use a device because I want you to be able to do it on the fly. I want you to realize, okay, I'm slightly overreacting, and I want to just flip that switch internally. But the devices are helpful when you're training because you can use it as monitoring to see how high that heart rate went. Really useful stuff. Do you have something, Mike? Oh, I thought you were.
I heard another really interesting part to that question though, which is when I get off of shift, just regularly getting off of shift, do I go straight to bed or do I wait until that evening? I would love to see a study on that to be able to answer it from a research standpoint, and I'll look tonight to see if there are any. I'd be actually a little surprised. But I would have to say it probably heavily depends on how much sleep you got in the previous couple of days. If staying up until that evening is going to put you in a major deficit overall, I would say go to bed earlier and try and split it. But if you're just lacking a couple of hours of sleep, I think there is some benefit to waiting to go to bed sometime with the light, because it will naturally ramp up your melatonin. You won't get in kind of this negative sleep cycle where you can't sleep then that evening. And then but I think there are extenuating circumstances where like you're up all night and you just go to bed after, because otherwise you're 8 hours in sleep debt.
That's or it might just be as simple as listen to your body. What do you need right now in this moment? Yeah. Other questions?
Hydrogen pills or water bottles, are they giving or is there no benefit?
I missed the first part of that question.
Hydrogen tablets or like even like the
Oh.
bottles that create hydrogen.
That's a loaded topic. I think it's gimmicky. I haven't seen super convincing science, but it could be that it's so far out, because you could make the argument that inside the mitochondria, there's a lot of proton movement there with hydrogen atoms. I'm just not totally sold that drinking high hydrogen water is going to end up working in that way. I've played with it myself. I didn't see any bump in my athletic performance, but hard to say. Some people swear by it. I just haven't seen convincing science yet. Great question. Yeah.
What is on oral versus inhalation and IV?
Excellent. They're all different, and I'll add on other ways too. You can get it as a nasal spray for the sinuses. We used to be able to get eye drops from when your eyes were gummed from smoke. Can't get those anymore in California. But nasal spray is a way to get it directly into the brain and sinus. Inhaling it is the best for the lungs. So there's just different delivery methods. The best for like just a high dose is going to be IV. We're bypassing any absorption issue and putting a large dose straight into the vein, where you're limited to how much you can breathe reasonably fluid wise before you're going to run into trouble. Oral pills don't work well, in my opinion, and the patches don't work well because the dose is too low. Liposomal oral stuff works well. I've tested, like I said, I've tested a lot of products over the years, and then I think that's where I get really persnickety about what works. But your best bang for your buck, if you're to pick one, would probably be IVs.
Under the tongue, sublingual ones, so like normal plans, there's also that one.
Yeah, I mentioned that one. It's just not nearly the same in efficacy and dose as an IV. Yeah. Other questions? Was this helpful? I hope we didn't bore you to death.
Very good.
All right, teacher buddies, and we'll be around the next couple of days, so ask us more questions.
Thank you. Do you guys have a room to sit in?
Yes, we are in green.
Green zone.
Yeah, green cell. We're already setting up. I'll check in with you guys in a sec because I want to ask a question about that. I'm gonna turn this recording off. Bye, everyone.
Guys, how many people are on Zoom tonight?
And the clinics are, so tomorrow and Sunday, starting at 9 AM, and then we'll be going till 12:30. So, we'll be doing the